question, ma'am, is that how do you think that India can play a stronger role in the issue of Kurdistan?
India can contribute a lot because democratization of Turkey wouldn't mean less headache also for India.
Yeah.
And I think the step or the declaration made by the Kurdish people leader Abdullah Öcalan on the 27th of February, calling Turkey for peace.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. This is Middle East Insights platform, and we are very, very honored today to specifically talk about conflicts, ceasefires, and power struggles for Kurdish statehood. Now, this is very important because it is perhaps the first time that I am able to have a conversation with a protagonist or a leader from the Kurdish identity who is also a woman. That means a lot. And her name is Nilüfer Koç. She's a distinguished expert on Middle East, and she currently serves as a spokesperson for Foreign Policy Committee of Kurdistan National Congress, or KNK. She pursued her political science at Bremen University. She was the co-president of KNK from 2013 to 2019 and has dedicated her life to advocating for Kurdish self-determination, national unity, women's participation in politics and society. Her work extends beyond diplomacy. She has also built cultural networks around the Kurdish cause, collaborating with artists like Jonas Stahl on projects such as New World Summit, Rojava, you all should know where Rojava is, I'm not going to tell you, and New World Embassy Kurdistan, marking a century since the Treaty of Lausanne. So today we are very, very privileged to have her with us, and thank you so much, ma'am, for being present.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So for the first time, it is that we are able to have a conversation, or maybe it's the second time actually, we are able to have a conversation about Kurdish identity. My first question to you is that how do you explain who is a Kurd to our students?
Well, the Kurds are one of the ancient nations of the Middle East, next to the Persians and Arabs, Armenians. So they have been living in the areas where they are today for thousands of years and have been also contributing to the human civilization. As you know that Mesopotamia was called the cradle of civilization, and one of the ethnic groups who contributed to the civilization have been the Kurds. And they are known as the people who are living actually in harmony with the nature. So the Kurds spend most of their time in thousands of years with the nature. So there's a kind of harmony between the Kurds and nature, which affected the Kurdish traditions and cultures until today. I would say natural elements, keeping natural elements in their daily life is very important to the Kurds. And during the whole history, Kurds have been organized in tribes, in clans, and later on with the upcoming of the three ideologies, the religions like Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, most of the Kurds have been then forced to convert to Islam by the Arab expansionism in the 11th century. But then, nevertheless, the Kurds have been also keeping traditions of their, let's say, natural harmony-based beliefs, like the Zoroastrian and Alawis. The Alawi Kurds and the Yazidis today, they still are conserving the Kurdish natural elements in their daily life. So we are talking now today about 50 million Kurds. So as the ancient people of the Middle East, and their country have been always called Kurdistan, the country where the Kurds live. The problems started like in India when Britain and France, particularly Britain, start to try to divide the former Ottoman Empire when the Ottoman Empire was weak in the 19th century, and the capitalist system in Europe was increasing. Industrialization was coming up in Europe. They need resources, natural resources. And then one wing went to India, for example, to the Asian part. One have been concentrated in the Middle East. And to control the region, particularly to divide the values of the Ottomans, means cultural values, material values, they then tried to divide this huge area of the Ottomans. Ottomans have been ruling for 700 years. But by beginning of the 20th century, it was collapsing. So it was the final stage of the empire. So this was the opportunity when the British come to divide the area amongst them and France and then Russia. So to control the region, they have been forcing some ethnic groups to build the nation states, like the Turks, Arabs, and Persians. In 1923, due to the agreement of Lausanne, the formerly Ottomans occupied Arab areas have been becoming transit to 22 Arab states. And the Kurds have been then divided amongst 4 nation states, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So, and then from then onwards, the problem was actually the Kurdish problem is not the problem that their country has been divided and given in pieces to Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. The most horrible part of the policy was the denial of the Kurds, of the Kurdish people, the denial of ancient people. So with the building of the nation states, Turkey, Iran, and Iraq and Syria, Kurdish vanished. So they said there's no Kurd, and all the constitution of each of these nation states was denying the existence of the ancient people of the region. So the Kurds became a common ball between the European powers and the nation states. So when the Europeans have been upset with Turkey, for example, what they did was provocating Kurdish resistance against Turkey, and otherwise also sometimes strengthening the Kurds to attack the Turks. So this game was during the past century. And in the last 50 years, with the upcoming of Abdullah Öcalan, the Kurdish people's leader, and his party, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the Kurdish destiny changed radically. And so the Kurds said, we are not the problem. Somehow, someone made us to a problem, our existence to a problem because of global political interest or regional empowerment. So he said to the Kurds, you have to change yourself. First, you need to be united, because divide and rule was a vital tool in the hands of so far the Turkish state, but also the European states. And then he united the Kurds. And furthermore, what he did was, for a social revolution inside of the Kurdish society, he changed the role of women in Kurdistan. He said, part of the energy of the society is not awake, so it has to be, the women has to participate in all field of life. So I would say in 50 years time, since 1973, when he started to say Kurdistan is a colony and we have to liberate Kurdistan from 73, and then foundation of PKK in 1978 until today, I would say the Kurds made real radical changes and becoming example for modernization of Middle East. So one of the achievement is, for example, the relation between men and women on equal basis. Emancipation become a cultural value amongst the society. The other part, since Kurds have 8 faiths, different faiths, so they can survive together. And because of demographic changes, because as a cause of imperial policy in our region, many other ethnic groups have been settled in our region. Let's say Arabs have been brought to Kurdistan, Turkmens, etc., etc. So then learning in coexistence with other cultures and ethnic groups. So this is another part of the curse, rejecting every kind of nationalism, not accusing other people who have become victims of demographic changes, instead including them, saying, well, so you can't go back, you stay with us here, we share common land, you are people of Kurdistan, we can survive together, because they're also victims. And this is another part which I would say can play a leading role in overcoming the tool of nationalism in our region. And also secularism is a third very important part to the women's movement. So far, Öcalan said religion is a private issue of each. It shouldn't be becoming a tool for power politics. So he was against this from the beginning onward, said every religion needs their own autonomy, but they have to respect each other based on mutual respect. So this is another part of, I would say, the third value we learned in the last 52 years in the revolution of Kurdistan. And as you see today, Islam is becoming a tool of power politics of Turkey, Iran, and some other states. So it has many of the values doesn't have anything to do with Islam. Actually, it's just unfortunately it became a tool in the hands of those who are now trying to occupy with the argument. So we are saving the Islamic world, which is not true. So it's like the Turkish president was doing in the past. So this all together the changes the Kurds made in their own society and politics, and also saying one fourth part which made it the Kurds important is that Öcalan started to say we don't need a Kurdish nation state, because a nation state can't be just a guarantee for you to survive. And in the last 35 years in Middle East, we have seen that many states collapsed. So the guarantee to survive is not a nation state. We have seen this. Libya was a quite powerful state. Iraq was a quite powerful state. Syria was quite powerful state because they sold oil. They were welfare state except democracy. So there was no democracy, but a lot of bread. So people has the guarantee of survive materially. But you see, naturally, all the nation states collapse, most of them. And the Kurds are staying steadfast now in Middle East without the state. And he said, well, so there's no need for us to say we need a nation state to create new borders, because creation of borders means you have to consider a new war. So, and he was saying we should find a smart way of solving the problems. We can imagine to live in the current existing borders, but we demand that Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria should recognize the existence of the Kurdish people in their constitution. Allow the Kurds education in mother tongue, for example, is forbidden. So allowing the Kurds to get their names, because we are not Turks, neither Arabs nor Persians. We are independent and ethnic group with our own long history and culture and names and language. He said we need recognition. So, and in Iraq, after the withdrawal of Saddam, it was then the first part of Kurdistan, which was liberated, and the Kurds have autonomy. Then the second part was then in northern Syria, when the Syrian regime started to shake. The Kurds used the opportunity to create in north and east part of Syria a new democratic administration together with the Christians, Armenians, Assyrians, and other components of the Syrian people. And now there are two other states left, which is Iran and Turkey, and they are now also in the process of shaking. They need to transition to democracy. This is the demand of the Kurds. And as such, both states has now difficulties with the global political players. And Öcalan was using this opportunity currently to say, listen, we can all win when we all ask for peace and democracy. So democracy wouldn't harm Turkey. It's the only way that Turkey can survive. But it needs to be changed. And he says to NATO, if you do need Turkey as a strategic ally, which we understand, then it would be for your benefit if Turkey transits to democracy, because otherwise, with the Erdogan regime, NATO will have always headache, because Erdogan was playing in the past the game becoming the new Sultan of Middle East, and as such, it was annoying to the US, Israel, and other parts, and also India actually. So by using Pakistan and then also being against the Indian Middle East Economic Corridor, which was signed in Delhi in 2023, I guess. So he was against this, and then now Öcalan is saying, listen, I want to build a democratic Turkey, which will, and all will benefit from that. So this is now the current stance of the Kurds. And I would say the only chance for the Middle East, if we can transit the Turkey to democracy. So you see, from a colonialized people to a key player of democratization of the region. This is the happening in the 52 years of the Kurdish revolution. And I'm happy to say that we achieved this level to help others also together with us to liberate themselves from any kind of exploitation and wars and violence, as we have seen in other parts in the world. So
actually, I was trying to research on what is common between Hindus and Kurds. And there were two things that were common. One was that Hindus have a long history of being colonized. Be it settler colonialism or capitalist colonialism, different kinds, be it the Afghans or be it the Mughals or be the British or the French or Portuguese or whatever, even Belgian, different parts of the entity. And that is one thing which we share with the Kurds. And the second thing which is common between the Hindus and the Kurds is most of the Hindu festivals are nature-based on the agricultural season. Most of it. And and we have many gods. And most of them are related with nature, or the element of nature is there in the personification of gods. That is something which I found was quite similar to between Hindus and Kurds. Talking about India's role with the Kurdish issue of statehood, India has been very diplomatic about it because it strongly wants to state the sovereignty of Turkey or Iraq or Iran or Syria. At the same time, with things changing in Syria, HTS has not had any kind of diplomatic communication with South Asia as of now. India has, in fact, the ONGC Videsh has investment in the oil and natural gas of Syria, which is under the control of the Kurds, and also in Iraq, which is under the control of the Kurds. So that is one thing which India does with Turkey, because Turkey also wants to be a member of NATO and BRICS and many other regional alliances. So it has suddenly become very quiet when it comes to Kashmir. But there was a very strong questioning about Pakistan, India, Kashmir issue in Turkey. And Turkey also has investments in India in terms of think tanks, in terms of many other ventures. My question to you is that do you think that Erdogan would, because he has to run again in 2028, and now Turkey needs to have a new constitution, do you think it is possible with the kind of ultra-conservative ideology that he has been following so far?
What I do believe is when Erdogan agree on democracy, let's say recognition of the Kurds, of all the faiths, making changes, democratic changes in the Turkish constitution, and also giving up the policy of aggression against the neighbors, like in Syria, Iraq, etc., etc. We don't mind, he say or not. But I think Turkey generally as state is now in a shaking process. It's not the issue just of regime change, or it's not the issue that Erdogan will keep his power as a president of the state. This is a technical issue, I would say. I think there's an urgent need, and so far I understood from the far right leader of Turkey, the leader of MHP, Devlet Bahçeli, he is the one who's now actually, let's say, dealing with the kind of new process with the Kurds. And Erdogan is now he came very late on the boat to the boat. So it was unexpectedly the guy who really hated the Kurds was the leader of the nationalistic movement, and what he's saying is very interesting. He said Turkey as a state is in trouble now because domestically they have a problem with the Kurds. The Kurds insist to get recognition. Secondly, they are challenged by the very fast running changes in Middle East itself.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Syria was taken over in 8 days, in 1 week time by the HTS. This is the reality in the region. So and then also the other component, the other global players, they are now moving for a new design of the region through Syria and others. And in this, Turkey don't have much space.
Yep.
So they are stuck also in international policy, particularly in case of Syria, in Iraq, because there are also others interested in this region. And this both was pushing the state to speak to the Kurdish people's leader, Abdullah Öcalan, who they abducted 26 years ago. And in his 26 years, he is in a solitary confinement. What they said, we will prevent that the Kurds can make gains in the changes of Middle East, which means that Kurds can also declare democracy in Turkey. So to prevent this, Bahçeli said Turkey is in real serious danger. So that was his position. Later, the Erdogan's problem was saying, I want to continue with my power. So let's say continuing power of regime. The other one is interested to save the state itself, the Turkish nation state. So both need the Kurds. Erdogan needs Kurdish votes to continue as the head of the state, and the Kurds say, this is not our business, actually. We want democracy. And if you will open the gates for democracy, you can stay for your long life. And this is not just a Kurdish decision, actually. All the people in Turkey have to decide, not us. But he needs, in the end, our votes, actually, because in the last elections, none of the Kurds voted for him.
Yeah.
That's why he lost power badly, also in the municipality elections and then national elections. So now he is step by step saying some positive words towards the Kurds. But we will wait for some concrete steps, which means, firstly, when Öcalan was declaring ceasefire, he was calling for a ceasefire to giving Turkey opportunity for democratization. And then his movement immediately said, we support you. Then the PKK was declaring ceasefire on the 1st of March. And this all is offering Turkey opportunity for democratic transition. So this includes also Erdogan's role. And I would say, when I look to the whole design structures of Middle East, I would say we have better options as Kurds. We have much more alternatives as Kurds than Turkey has. So that's why the question is, who depends on whom? I would say Turkey depends on us. Because, Iran is also another part, and the second biggest part of Kurdistan is occupied by Iran.
Yeah.
And we have seen with Xinjiang Azadi, we have been shaking the country. So, and these all make us very important to the region, the key players, I would say. And I think Erdogan is considering all this. He has to give up this being against women, for example. We can't accept when he said the women have to give birth to 3 children, they have to cover themselves, whatever. So he's not allowed. He shouldn't talk about our life as women, for example, whether Kurdish or non-Kurdish, I don't care. Second, he has to respect all religion, so not forcing Islam on anyone. For example, if he say, I won't do this, okay. And if he's giving up this very male-dominated language of threatening, always threatening, so this aggressive, patriarchal, macho politics must be given up. So then we can accept, say, okay, we will talk to you, we will support you. And let's see if he's able to do this or not. But Turkey is now in a challenging position. They have to decide if they want friendship with the Kurds, or will they continue with being hostile to the Kurds. If they would choose the second way, that will be bad for Turkey, because all the dictators, Saddam, Assad, have been hostile to the Kurds and they lost. And I guess Erdogan and the other one in Iran, they will also lose. Those who are friendly to the Kurds, they will gain the opportunity for the future.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing which I found very difficult to process, was the lack of speaking one's own language or getting one's own name. So, for example, in Iran, Mehsa Amini, that's the Persian name, and it's not the Kurdish name.
Yes, we all have, Kurdish names have been forbidden in Turkey, for example. And also in Iran, her first name is Jina, it's Kurdish. So all of our usually the Kurds don't have surnames, but 1923, when Atatürk was modernizing Turkey, he was bringing European mentalities to Turkey, so giving people surnames. So actually the Kurds have been called after their tribe, the region where they come from, and then in the village where they live, they have been then called by the name of their tribe. And then when the mother is powerful in the family, or the father, then they're called after the name of the mother or father. So this is the Kurdish tradition. But then modernization through modernization means copying Europeans, forced us also to take the surnames. Turkey gave us the surnames. For example, my surname is Koç. And then all of us has Turkish surnames. But still the Kurds are calling them after their tribes and their mothers and fathers, or the region where they come from. And then also in Iran, so Kurdish education mother tongue is not allowed. Using the Kurdish names is still a problem also in Iran. In Turkey, even our letters have been forbidden.
Yes. Yeah.
We have a Q, X, W, it's forbidden.
Yeah.
But when they wrote New York, they used W, But we are not allowed to use the W in our names. But when they write New York, they write it like it is. But when we say my son's name is Walad, which starts with W, it's forbidden. For example, this is a schizophrenia really of politics in Turkey. And I will tell you something what I experienced by myself when I was in Kurdistan 92. The traffic lamps, they are red, yellow, green. These are Kurdish traditional colors. In 91, when there were uprisings everywhere in Kurdistan, Turkey, they have been changing the colors of traffic lamp. Instead of green, they put blue in. Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking by my own, really. Yeah. Okay. And then you are forced to speak Turkish. By violence is used in the primary schools, forcing the children to learn Turkish. It was not by voluntarily, it's a must. Otherwise, you can't survive in Turkey when you don't speak Turkish, because the constitution is saying the only language of this country is Turkish. So, and then when you some like similar to your time of British colonialism, when Indian tried to speak the best English.
Yeah.
To be accepted, So, and then the same was happened to us. To be accepted, we have been trying to speak the best Turkish, better than the Turks. So,
yes.
But now we gave all this up, so we come back to our own consciousness, actually.
No, I agree with you. We are more British than the Brits, actually. And it's the same. It's the same with Algerians, for example. They speak French better than Arabic, the younger generation, or even the millennial or the elder generation. That kind of, and the changing of the names, the 3-part series, like first name, middle name, and surname, that kind of structure has been implanted on most of the colonies all over the world, so that the colonial powers could have easy census. because they didn't understand what is caste and jati and so many other things in India or whatever, British India, and then it was just to make it easier for them. There's one question which is asked by Anurag, and that is coming from the fact that, you also mentioned about that this macho patriarchal politics has to be stopped. I am just counting all the leaders from Turkey, Israel, Gulf countries, India, all of them, all are men. So nevertheless, the question here is that he's asking about what are your comments on Jineolojî, the idea of questioning and eradicating patriarchal mindset and the study of women, which was propagated by Abdullah Öcalan, and specifically, and that is seen in Rojava, it is seen in many other places of Kurdistan. So what do you mean by it, or how important is it?
For the process of decolonization, I mean, in the end, we are colonialized people. Colonialization starts with the brain, occupation of your brain, the way how you think, the methods you use to explain a problem, to find a solution. We have been educated in the schools of our colonialist occupiers. And Öcalan said it's not just enough to say that the struggle of freedom needs also to liberate your brain, the way of thinking.
Yeah.
And he said, for that, it's important that we give up the methodology of positivism, from the 19th century, which come up from Europe, from the French guy called Auguste Comte.
Yeah.
Everything which you can, let's say, prove exists. So this is the main thing. So based on empiric science. And Ocalan is saying this is not right because, like you said before, we are people who has a direct link to nature. So you can't reject metaphysics. He accepts animism as the first science of the communal structures thousands of years ago, or mythology. He's accepting them as a science, which the normal science is rejecting, actually, because they say everything what you can prove exists. So he says Jineolojî, because women, science is the issue of women, he said. The first science is the issue that you try to understand your environment, where you live, why you live, with whom you live. So it's science is the way to explain, to understand the things around you. And he said this started with women, and women's way of thinking is not in categories or dogmas. So it's fluent, like the trend in the nature. And this kind of positivism is forcing you just to use one part of the brain, the analytical intelligence. What about the emotional intelligence? He says this power. This is also a power we have to accept, and said to women, you need to create women's science to overcome the patriarchal dominated positivist way of thinking. Because he said women are more close. I mean, he's speaking about our history, the history of the Kurds in the few thousand years ago. So we still have kept some of the elements, values of that time hidden in very different forms of today. The socialization, the sociology of the Kurds are hiding some of the values still. So, and mostly amongst the women. So the colonialization couldn't affect the women like they did with men in our society. So he said, you have been good in fighting, defeating the enemy militarily in self-defense. You have been able to speak in politics for the Kurdish women. You have a party, you have an organization, you have an army. Now is the turn to liberate the brains of all the Kurds from patriarchal thinking. So that's why this is that can be done by the science of women, Jineolojî, the science of women. And the idea came up in 2007. So, and then we start to talk, what does he want from us? So And then we start to study and then have seen that history, chemistry, physics. So we have then tried to look from different perspectives. And the other point was we bringing the science to the society, because science is becoming a part of universities, and just part of the society is going to the universities. What about the majority of the society? Why shouldn't they have access to access to science? So, and that's why with Jineolojî together, the idea came up to build everywhere academies amongst in the society itself. And the methods of pedagogy, of teaching, has to be built by women. So it's the pedagogy of freedom.
Yeah.
And so, for example, what they did in Rojava was, for example, giving notes to children in primary school, because notes are forcing the child to think like the teacher want to think. So in Rojava, instead, the child has to improve in free space without any fear with the notes or pressure by the teacher. So Jineolojî is now observing the education system from kindergarten until the universities. And also parallelly to the universities, there are several thousand of academies for each field of the problems of the society. And Jineolojî is a center where women's science is looking that there's no patriarchy, there's no classification, no categorization, but equality everywhere. And then the thinking shouldn't be kept just in dogmas. So life is fluent, thinking is also fluent. And that part of science is also the emotional intelligence, which is very active in the women's movement, because the women kept still this part which was downgraded by Aristoteles, by Auguste Comte. We are now discovering our part of emotional intelligence, which is our binding to the nature, to metaphysics as women. And this we want to update for the 21st century through the modern instruments of institutions like academies or centers of Jineolojî, etc., etc. So it helped us really to rethink freely, having been, let's say, liberating the brain from these dogmas, actually, from black and white, oppressors and oppressed. First class or second class, so this we are giving up, trying to learn different way to think. And this is the contribution of Jineolojî, which helped particularly our revolution in Rojava to become a role model for the region.
No, that is very, very interesting, ma'am, because a man can look at a tube light and a bulb and just think nothing. But a woman can look at a bulb and think 100 things at the same time, and also do some things at the same time, But I don't want all the male scholars to, you're making fun of us. So the point is that that is a very important thing. And I guess science has always been so, specifically empirical studies or positivism, so anti or critical of experience-based, emotional-based analysis. And just look at where it has done. Like even today, how many women are in STEM research? How many women are in the references of bibliography or whatever, of books or research papers? How many women, and it's worse for women from so-called, global south. So that kind of, and capitalism also plays a strong role in controlling that kind of mindset of creating one and the first and the second, that very capitalist reflex. My last question, it is also asked by Anurag, and he's basically asking, like, for example, in Hinduism, now though religion is also a kind of science and vice versa, but like in Hinduism, we have goddess Durga and Kali who are worshipped. It has nothing to do with gender-based violence, that continues. But at the same time, what is the idea of pre-Abrahamic female deities from the globe, like Cybele, Athena, Ishtar, Isis? the Egyptian goddess, not to be confused with the terror group. Thank you for letting us know. And we will be talking about goddess Isis. Anyway, so the point is that how do you see, even though women have been closely associated, which even ecofeminism has stated, the entire study of it, that with nature, women have been closely associated with it. That is something which is similar in women who are tribal in any part of the world, women who are of any religion. Their cosmic conversation with the nature as an everyday, be it in agriculture, be it in gathering, be it in taking care of their own indigenous identity. So in simple terms, in Kurdish religion, our genealogy, does the idea of it also come from the part of goddesses that have been prayed in the past?
There was a time in the 90s where we have been studying a lot about the history of Middle East and the goddesses. Assyrian, Ishtar is Assyrian goddess in our region, and then Zenubia in Palmyra is a place, I think 60 kilometers south from Damascus. Well, there's a problem we have currently in case of studying the history of gods and goddesses in our region, because we usually said that patriarchal societies start 5,000 years ago, but now some archaeological discoveries in our region, in particular the city where Ocalan was born, called Urfa, it says that civilization started long before. And so we are now in between to define the things from new, because we said 5,000 years, there are some saying it has started earlier, the patriarchal system. But there's we will decide to make it understandable, decide from North Mesopotamia, Upper Mesopotamia, and Lower Mesopotamia. The Upper Mesopotamia is the area around the mountains of Zagros, northern Iran, Iranian Kurdistan, up to the city of Urfa is the Golden Moon. It's called the area of the Golden Moon, where domestication of animals, agriculture started by women, etc. So it was the time of mother-ruled societies. And in these, we hadn't goddesses in our region, in Upper Mesopotamia, more in Lower Mesopotamia. In Upper Mesopotamia, in the tradition where we come from, or our ancestors come from, is that the mother was, let's say, the figure or the key person in keeping the society together. With the experiences, one of their characteristics was integration, inclusion, and rejecting hierarchies, not ruling, but administrating the clans accordingly to mutual respect. So this was the characteristics of that time. We have been searching much more about this. And then there's a period in some other cultures where the mother become then later on the goddesses.
Yeah.
So there's a transition process. I guess it took thousands of years. So it need the genealogy is now, our Academy of Genealogy is now busy to find the dates, how it started, when it started from goddesses to gods in our region, because there are some writings given by the Sumerians in their tablets. They say there's the mythology of the goddess Inanna. This is the final period of the goddesses, and goddesses are not just positive, actually, because mother-ruled society rejects hierarchies, but goddesses become a hierarchical position. So whether you say it's a good goddesses or not, but it's let's say it's someone over the society, But the natural society, the role of mother in the natural society, don't have these hierarchies. Goddesses, it means the women become a higher upper hierarchy over the society. That's what they call them, goddesses. Comparing to the gods, okay, they have been better. Okay, I must confess this. In Middle East, the period of goddesses ended with Inanna, where she is complaining that the god, I don't know, I forgot the name of the god, but she said, the god has stolen all of my values, all of my truths. I found I had 104 truths and values, achievements, and the god has stolen it from me. So this is the final stage. She is the last goddesses, which we can accept still as a, let's say, as a women's movement. But then later on, the period of gods are starting. So, and the gods means a terrible bad time for the humanity, really.
Question, ma'am, is that how do you think that India can play a stronger role in the issue of Kurdistan?
I think India can contribute a lot because democratization of Turkey wouldn't mean less headache also for India.
Yeah.
And I think the step or the declaration made by the Kurdish people leader Abdullah Öcalan on the 27th of February, calling Turkey for peace, we would have less aggressor in the region. So, and also thinking and looking from the perspective of India's interest to be also part of the developments in Middle East, because I guess the project of IMEC is very vital for India, economically and also diplomatically. So having Turkey, having democratic Turkey means not having Turkey as an obstacle for this project also. That's why I think it's also India will gain from democratization of Turkey. I'm not just saying that in case of that Turkey was since 2012, Turkey was supporting jihadists, for example, in many places of the world. And as such, it became a problem or challenge for many of the states, including India. And otherwise, the foreign policy of Turkey was based to use the contradiction between the states, let's say between India and Pakistan. So having a democratic Turkey will affect also their foreign policy. And I think in this, India can support the Kurdish call. Most of the states, and very surprisingly, all those who have been on the side of Turkey in the last 40 years, like Germany, for example, they welcomed Öcalan's step and said, we are ready to help. And this was the official governmental statement regarding Öcalan's call. And imagine China have never been talking about the Kurds, never. Publicly, even Chinese foreign ministry welcomed this step, the call of Öcalan, and also the U.S., United Nations. So it was like that. All people are waiting that some is going first Turkey for democratization and welcome this step. And we wish that India can have also support this process of democratization, which means that all of us will gain. Even including Turkey itself, Erdogan will gain, we will gain, India, all this. I think it was a historical step which Öcalan initiated. It's a new form of understanding of, you see, in the past, conflict resolution have been also including always third party, fourth party, whatever. So he says, we can talk to each other, we need each other, we can survive together, we can live in coexistence together, and but the precondition is of course democratization. So, and as such, I think we can also become an example to solve other national conflicts in the region. There are a lot of conflicts. The problem of Armenians are not solved. The problem of the Assyrian is not solved. The Palestinian problem is not solved. There are a lot of, if we can achieve to have a solution, how ethnic groups can survive together under the umbrella of democracy, that can be a contribution for the region. And I do believe that India will play an important role, particularly from Pacific onwards. India has already a very interesting policy towards the Kurds in Iraq, very supporting Kurds in Iraq. And I think now is the right time to see the Kurds as a nation, not just Kurds of Iraq, and then we just speak with the Kurds in Iraq, but reject to speak with the Kurds in Syria and Turkey. I don't think this divide and rule policy of the British shouldn't be principle of Indian foreign policy towards the Kurds, and particularly now there's a good opportunity. Supporting also the Kurds in Turkey, whether publicly or in the United Nations. There are a lot of opportunities. And it's important for us to have the support of Indian foreign policy, and also that we can build also cultural bridges. I mean, in the end, we are somehow, our languages are from same roots. And I have read the book a few years ago. It was called Kurdistan of Hindustan. So
Wow.
a lot of common values we have in language, in culture, names. I was there. I have seen a lot of words where we have the same. You see, the most important is dil, heart.
Yeah.
So that can be our common symbol.
Yeah.
We are people of heart, and I think as such, we can do much more than just political and diplomatic issue, also culturally.
Yeah, no,
And
also, yeah.
lead such a project for us together to do it in India.
Yeah, it is definitely. And the people to people understanding, it's not just like, I think one good thing that is happening with the kind of chaos created by Trump is that other countries are taking ownership of their own politics and protecting it foreign policy wise, economically, or whatever tariffs mean or whatever. So one thing is that in the long run it will give more leverage to countries from the South Asian context or from other contexts to speak. I would really thank you, ma'am, for the privilege of your time and speaking, and I do hope that after your tenure is over, even for a few years, if possible, do become a professor. I think that it would be, maybe after 20, 30 years, whenever, but do, because you have a very different kind of academic and policy level stand of making students understand.
Thank you.
And
the second common word we have is azadi, freedom.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Dil and azad is enough for friendship, huh?
Yeah. A dil should always be azad. So yeah. I understand. Yes.